On today's episode 2 of Sculpt N Create, we have a truly inspiring guest, Esther Avant. Esther is an author, speaker, and coach who's dedicated to helping people prioritize their health so they can unlock their full potential and achieve lasting success in all areas of their lives. Best known for her FITT Framework and the 3 C's of success, consistency, commitment, and confidence, Esther has helped countless individuals break free from overwhelm and develop the mindset and habits needed to thrive. With over 19 years of experience in the fitness and health coaching world, Esther has not only transformed her own life, but also authored a best-selling book and built a successful coaching business. She runs marathon, passed the CISSN exam, and even joins Toastmasters to continually challenge herself. Whether through her book, her coaching, or her podcast, Esther empowers people to make lasting positive changes that prepare them forward in health and life. Today, she's developing corporate wellness programs and preparing for an upcoming keynote speech. Join me as we dive into her journey and explore how health is the foundation for success in every area of life. Sculpt N Create, where fitness fuels creativity. I'm your host, Trea Da Fit Artist, and here we have Esther, and she's a fellow fitness specialist just as me, and she's here to tell her journey and story. So, welcome to the show, Esther.
I'm glad. I'm excited.
Thank you for coming on. So, I guess as we get started and so forth, just tell us a little bit about you. You know, like what your background is and what you currently do, who you help.
Yeah, I've been a trainer for a little over 19 years. I started in college. I was majoring in exercise science, and I worked at the college gym during school. Immediately started working in commercial fitness. I was working at a Boston sports club and got into management from there. And then over the course of my career, have done everything from working at a community rec center to a boutique group fitness studio, corporate wellness. And then about 10 years ago, started my own online coaching business. And that's kind of evolved from just exercise to being really comprehensive exercise, nutrition, lifestyle type coaching, primarily for people with weight loss goals. And, you know, what I've seen is the ripple effect that prioritizing your health has in all the other areas of your life, whether it's your creativity, a corporate career, your family, every aspect of your life benefits when you take care of yourself and your health.
Tell me, like, how did your fitness journey start? Like, how did, everybody got their origin story about how it started. So it's kind of cool to hear where everybody started from. So, like, what happened to it? What made you go into fitness?
Yeah, that's a great question. I found the local YMCA in kind of the middle of high school and just really liked it. I went to a really small high school where everybody played sports, even if you weren't very good at them. So I was active, I was on teams, but I just hated the pressure of feeling like I was going to let a team down or that people were watching me do things that were embarrassing. So I really kind of found my place at the gym where I could push myself and do something that was good for me that didn't have spectators and, didn't have teammates involved. So I just really liked being able to go and do my own thing, how I felt afterward. And, obviously being a 15, 16-year-old girl, like getting attention from boys was nice too. And that was kind of the beginning of once I started working out. And at the beginning, it was just like the Nautilus circuit and the stair stepper. I didn't really know what I was doing. I just went in and did kind of the easy stuff. But then I started caring more about nutrition and thinking, well, if I'm pushing myself in the gym, how do I kind of eat to support the results that I want? And that was kind of the influential time where we're also looking at colleges and figuring out what we want to do with our lives. And I just kind of had the mentality of like, well, I guess if I could get paid to do anything, I'd want to be in the gym. And it wasn't really any deeper than that. It wasn't this, I really want to help people. It was kind of a selfish, I like being in the gym. So if that's a job, cool. And then my major, I went to Boston University, and school was much harder than I was expecting. And actually, I was so overwhelmed in this kind of like, a small fish in a big pond feeling that I completely stopped working out, ate, my body weight in the dining hall every day, put on a bunch of weight, had it more like the 15 instead of freshman 30, and really kind of got away from that healthy identity. And that was kind of the first of a few experiences where I realized that it's so much more than exercise, and it's so much more than looking good. And then as, kind of my life developed, that's how I started learning things for my own selfish reasons, and then would be like, oh, other people could benefit from this also. And then it would get kind of incorporated into my coaching.
I kind of have a similar background as well with it. It started with vanity, and then it just I guess snowball effect into other things and so forth. And I actually got my start as a trainer at the YMCA. So that's cool. So what led you to
cool.
like actually training people once you had that epiphany and said, okay, I can definitely help people out? So what transpired there? Like what led you to that? And like, how did that get started? Did you start at a gym? Did you go, or did you do it on your own? How did
Yeah, great question. So it all just sort of feels like it was kind of presented to me. So when I was in college, one of my mandatory classes was studying for a group exercise and a personal training certification. So it just kind of fell into my lap that I was like, well, now I have the certification. I might as well see if I could do something with it. So I was getting paid $15 a session at the college gym. And then after college, it was kind of the next obvious thing was, well, why don't I just see if I can go be a trainer and get paid more somewhere else? So I was working at a very big commercial gym, and that was my first introduction to personal training, not just being about the training, but you're also largely a salesperson. And I met a lot of other trainers who felt similarly and were like, I just wanted to get paid to train. I don't have, the skills to sell people. And this is really out of my wheelhouse and my comfort zone. So it was interesting to see kind of the sink or swim there, where some coaches or some trainers said, this isn't for me, and left and did other things. And some trainers were like, all right, well, I don't really want to be in sales, but I do want to train people. And if I have to sell them in order to train them, I will learn those skills. And I was kind of in that latter group of, well, I don't know what else I'd be doing, so I might as well out. Then I think I said I got into management. So I had a team of trainers that I was managing. Then I moved cross country and was working in corporate wellness and boutique group fitness. And then I moved back across the country. My husband's in the military, and I was working at a rec center. And that was at the beginning. That was probably like 2014-ish. So kind of the beginning of online anything. And I saw this handful of like really early adoptive trainers who were working online. And I just sort of felt like, well, what do they have that I don't? I'm qualified, I'm experienced, I'm smart. Surely I can figure this out. And that's what kind of led me into online coaching, not realizing at the time just how hard it was, that you see people once they've made it, you don't see them writing blogs that 2 people are reading and offering all these freebies that nobody wants and all this stuff. So it took me a lot longer to get traction online than I was kind of expecting, but it was worth it because I knew with my husband's military career, we were going to be moving every few years, and to be an in-person trainer and get hired at a new gym and then, establish yourself enough that you have a full roster, can take a couple of years. So the thought of having to start over every time we moved was really unappealing. So that sort of left me with like, all right, well then online is your best bet. So you better figure that out. And then that led to, what I do now, and learning all sorts of different skills in, online marketing and social media and all sorts of things that I didn't think that I would be doing, but have needed to learn. And I feel like that's kind of, we talk about where fitness fuels creativity. When you hear creativity, you often think about, artists and creators and people in, who are painting and writing poetry and things like that. But creativity can also be just the willingness to try new things and experiment with what that looks like, and just kind of be willing to put yourself out there and say like, well, if this isn't working, like, what are some other options? Kind of being curious and being willing to kind of create some new options for yourself.
That's kind of where I look at it, even though my niche is artists and entertainers, musicians, actors, models, and so forth. That's the whole embodiment of creativity is, you reinventing yourself all the time, man. And fitness being being a fitness trainer, we always constantly recreating ourselves. So, and I look at fitness being your body is a work of art. So you constantly working on yourself, your mind, mentally, and stuff like that. So you carving yourself, like I said, there metaphorically, and so forth. So being stronger and being a better version of it, goes a long way. I like what you were saying about, a lot of trainers out there, so say somebody listen to this, they don't realize that they want to train, they probably good at training, but they don't necessarily know anything about sales. That's something that the certifications don't tell us, and they really just throw you out there to the wolves, so to speak. Don't even really tell you how to train. So tell me, like, what was that experience once you like realized, you had to go into sales, and then also too, you've been doing it 19 years. What has kept you doing it for so long and so forth? Because it's a dog-eat-dog world out there, and sometimes it's highs and lows. So what has carried you these 19 years plus?
Yeah, that's a great question. It was very uncomfortable at first. And I remember a lot of, complaining sessions in the staff lounge with the other new trainers talking about like, I didn't get into this to be selling people stuff. And I guess, a part of it was not really having a backup plan where I was like, well, I don't know what else I would do if I quit this job. So I might as well just like kind of try to figure it out. And the thing I really remember coming back to is that we were selling something that people needed, not something that we should feel like morally or ethically concerned about. We weren't selling people drugs or something that was going to hurt them. We were selling them their health. And that mental shift from I'm trying to convince them to give me their money to I'm trying to help them see that they are worth the investment in themselves was really helpful. And it just took some of the pressure off. Of course, I had bills to pay and things like that, but to remind myself that, worst case scenario, I don't come from money or anything, but like worst case, I could move back in with my parents. I wasn't going to, the worst case scenario wasn't that bad. It would feel very bad. But even if I ended up being terrible at it and never sold anybody, well, then I would figure that out. So I just kind of reminded myself that it feels like there's a lot on the line, but you do have kind of the time to figure this out and to get better at it. And I think that attitude has helped throughout my career. And the thing that keeps me going is at this point, like I'm very experienced. I know that I'm good at what I do. I know that I'm helping people. And I still don't really have a backup plan. I don't know what else I would enjoy as much as this. So that's the main thing. And it does help to get established to the point where you have a reputation, you've made a name for yourself, you're getting referrals, things that you don't feel like you're constantly selling that kind of show you, all right, this hard work is paying off. And now, my life is easier, or I'm able to, like a podcast is a great platform to kind of warm someone up. They get to know you in a really low investment sort of way. And then once they realize that they like you, they feel like they can trust you, then they're more likely to want to work with you. So realizing that there's so many different ways to market and sell, I think has been really helpful.
I agree with you there, and that's one of the reasons why I started podcast. And I didn't really want to do it this soon, but it just happened to like let me go on see what it do, And I appreciate it. So
good for you.
I was pretty bad at sales myself as well. Like I said, we more thinking about the training side. We ain't thinking about the business side of things. And I think that definitely correlates with artists and entertainers as well. They don't necessarily think of themselves as an entrepreneur, and they don't think of what they do as a business. So definitely I would say framing yourself as a business, stuff like that goes a long way in traversing this field that we do and so forth. So
yeah, no, that's a great point. You especially with entertainers, you feel like, they just want to like play their sport or perform on stage. And there's so much that you don't realize goes into it that first you need to market yourself and sell yourself to get into that place. And I think the reason so few people are as successful as they want to be is because so many people kind of shut down at like, oh, well, that's not what I want to be doing. And instead of seeing it as, kind of means to an end, well, this is what you need to do if you want to get there, they'll just give up. So I think it's so powerful to see the people who are succeeding through all of that and realizing there were a lot of things that were out of their comfort zone, out of their wheelhouse. And they were just so driven and committed to this goal that they were willing to figure out the other stuff along the way.
My thing when I was selling, when I first started selling, I was like, you just really selling all the bells and whistles where you get this particular feature, you get this feature, and stuff like that. Then until I learned that now you sell in the way, how you sell is pretty much like you sell the outcome more than, what they going to get, more than what result they going to get, more than what they getting to get to the result. Because they really don't care. They just want the end result. So once you start learning that,
yes. Yes, that's a good point. Yeah, especially when you know like all the bells and whistles and you're proud of them and you want to feature them, and it's hard to not talk about that. But if you think about yourself as a consumer, you're like, listen, if I'm buying a TV, like I don't care about the pixels. I don't, I want to know like how clear is, the game going to be or whatever it is. It's interesting when you kind of get in your own head, you forget to take a step back and be like, all right, if I were on the other side of this, what would sell me? Like, we're just two humans talking.
Definitely.
How do I just not be weird?
I usually go confide with him a lot, even though he's not in this field, but I confide in with him just to get a consumer or, sort of opinion. And that's what he used to tell me. He said, man, you thinking like the merchant, but the entrepreneur, you need to think as a consumer sometimes, and stuff like that to see where they come from to help you out on that thing. So that does go a lot on way. Okay, cool. So let's talk about the FITT framework. Like now I know of the FITT framework as frequency, intensity, time, and type. That's the normal or the basics of it, but you happen to have a different version of that and how you apply that to fitness and of life as well. Let's talk about that.
Yeah. So over the last couple decades, I realized the kind of formula that was helping my clients be so successful, A, was repeatable, and B, wasn't unique to fitness. It applies to any goal. So figure out and consistently do the big rock behaviors that give you the most bang for your buck. So we know from working with clients that people come in with so many misconceptions about what it is they have to do, what makes a difference. They're just totally overwhelmed. They're like, I have to do this whole laundry list of things in order to be fit or healthy. And we know that there's 3 or 4 of those things that make the biggest difference. Everything else is basically just noise you can forget about. So when you focus on, I call them the big rocks, when you focus on just those big rock habits, you're able to devote more energy to figuring out, how do I make this feel easy so that I can do it consistently without it feeling like a second job? And that just really cuts down on the overwhelm and the resistance to getting started in the first place, where you can just say like, oh, it's only this handful of things. All right, that's doable. The I is increasing the people around you who support you and can help you succeed. So developing that support system, whether it's working with a trainer, a coach, a dietitian, joining a workout group, just finding other like-minded people who help normalize the lifestyle that you're trying to create. What I noticed is that we tend to try to do everything ourselves. And I know from when I first started working online, I was way too stubborn and I guess probably egotistical to hire a business coach for years, because I kept telling myself, like, I'm smart, I should be able to figure this out. And like, could I have? Sure. Yeah. And I think it's a lot of us. And like, that's not untrue. I could have figured it out myself, but help exists and can expedite the process and help you be more successful faster and with less, discomfort. So I really encourage people to see asking for help as a sign of strength and confidence rather than a sign of weakness that they should be ashamed of, because it really isn't a negative thing. It's a great thing to say, there's a gap in my skill set. I want to get from A to B, and I've got this gap that I need to cover. What can help me do that faster? Then the 2 T's are treating yourself with compassion and taking responsibility for your behaviors. I consider those 2 kind of the flip sides of the same coin. I think very often we are our own toughest critics and really hard on ourselves. We have an impossibly high standard for ourselves. And then when we inevitably fall short, we blow it out of proportion and make it like this personal shortcoming. Because I, didn't do this, I'm always going to be this miserable failure. I'm always going to be weak. I'm always going to be small. I'm always going to be overweight. Whatever it is, we really beat ourselves up about it. And then because we're in this like really negative headspace, we're not able to see the lessons in that, in that failure, and we're not able to grow from it. So I think it's really important that you have both, that you can treat yourself the way you would any other person that you care about and not be so hard on yourself, but also to then take responsibility and say, okay, now that I know this, what am I going to do differently? Nobody can come do this for me. Nobody can save me. I need to be the one who is putting in the work. And I think when you learn how to balance those 2 things, you're able to then make consistent progress without having all those starts and stops that most people struggle with. And so that's the framework. And then all of that applies to any other goal. If you're trying to build a business, okay, well, what are your business big rocks? How are you going to move the needle in filling up your roster, in getting on bigger stages, in signing a bigger contract? What matters for that whose help do you need? Do you need an agent? Do you want to join some sort of group where you're networking and supporting each other? And where do you need to turn the dials up and down on the compassion and the responsibility?
Definitely. So like, how would you say that will like transpire like in the fitness world, with the FITT framework as you portray it? Because, plenty of time they schedules is, just really demanding and hectic. They pull so many different ways. It's hard to really just get a workout in, eat a certain way, and so forth. So like, how do you think that would apply, and just not only to their fitness, but also to what they're doing in their daily lives?
Great question. So that the crux of that is figuring out your big rocks, and that can be as macro or as micro as as makes sense. So from a macro, exercise wise, are you getting in 3 strength training sessions a week, roughly 30 minutes? We're all busy, but most of us can make that work with some intention. Taking that down even further, within those workouts, are the exercises you're choosing the most impactful, right? You can spend 30 minutes in the gym doing, lat raises and calf raises and not be working most of your body. Or you can say, all right, I've got 30 minutes here. I'm going to be doing some form of squat, some form of hip hinge, some sort of push, press, pull, a weighted carry. You can make sure that what you're doing in that time is going to give you the most bang for your buck. So that's kind of the lens I like to apply to everything, is when you're busy, what you choose to do with the little time you're able to carve out becomes that much more important. So always kind of looking through that, is this thing that I'm choosing going to be impactful? Similarly, say with nutrition, rather than working out 7 days a week and then having no time to think about food, or food is always an afterthought, you take one day where instead of that 30-minute workout, you're spending 30 minutes chopping some veggies and sticking them in the oven to roast, or sticking some chicken in your crock pot so that you've got ingredients ready to go. So like just thinking efficiently and getting the most bang for your buck. Then I think the you're increasing your support system. So figuring out, when I'm busy, I want to make sure that the people I'm spending my time with are helping me grow. So, you've heard the kind of cliche, you're the product of the 5 people you spend the most time with, things like that. But if you're trying to make it in an entertainment career, or if you're trying to just shed some body fat, or if you're trying to get promoted in your corporate career or have a healthy marriage, doesn't matter what it is, look at the people you're spending time with. Are they also striving to improve in some area of their lives? Or are they just sort of complacent, spinning their wheels, kind of dragging you back down to the status quo, rather than elevating with you? And being really intentional about who you choose to spend that time with. If you've got another friend who is an athlete who is striving to play professionally or in college, or whatever it is, the more time you spend together, the more likely you are practicing, fueling your bodies well, doing the networking, or just like the strategizing. So that becomes that much more important, no matter what level you're at.
You are who you hang around, and so forth. So if you're going to elevate, you need to be around people who is elevating themselves to help elevate you as well, and y'all kind of grow together and so forth. That basically what you're saying? Okay, gotcha.
Exactly.
Okay. So now I didn't ask, like, who do you normally help for your business and so forth?
Yeah, great question. The majority of my online career, I've worked with primarily working moms with weight loss goals. In the last about year, I've co-founded another coaching business, and we're doing more corporate wellness and executive health coaching, trying to kind of combat some of that decision fatigue that high-level leaders are often making, where it's not that they don't want to be healthy, it's that just making one more decision is like one thing too many, so it kind of falls to the wayside. So we're coming in with sort of a bespoke, really high-touch level of coaching, where we kind of break down, like, here's today, and help just bring health back to the forefront.
Busy moms and in the corporate field as well, is what you're saying? Okay.
Yeah. So now it's kind of both of those. There's some overlap there, but now we've branched into coaching men as well.
And like, do you have any, like, stories that like come to mind of that of a person that you help? We all have those stories. So what would you say has been your biggest shining moment as a health and fitness coach in your career?
Yeah, there's so many. It's hard not to focus on the ones who have lost a ton of weight, because it's just such a visually like mind-blowing thing. One comes to mind, actually. We were chatting earlier today. She's down over 100 pounds, and part of what's so compelling about her story is she reached out to us probably not the day, but like within a week after her husband had died very suddenly of a heart attack. And she realized immediately that she needed to change her life, because now her kids only had her to rely on. And she used that really traumatic, terrible experience as the catalyst to take back her health. And it's not just that she's lost this 100 pounds, but she's transformed her entire life. Like her relationships with her kids are thriving. She is happy socially. She's thriving in her career. Just every aspect of her life is better, and not just because she's lost the weight, but because of the person that she's become along the way. And that's just so, yeah, it's fun to work with the really high level athletes and get, that small PR, that small speed increase, things like that. It's also really, really powerful to see, kind of how the quote unquote regular people can change their lives, and the ripple effect that has outside of the gym and into the rest of their lives, and then everybody that they touch after.
I always say, if you got to take care of yourself first before you can take care of everything else that you got going, for as your relationships, your kids, family, your job, and so forth. So taking care of yourself helps out of that. And then also fitness definitely spills out into every facet that we do in life. So there's definitely a testament to that. Okay, now for as like the business side of things, as I think like I alluded to earlier, tell them more about the grit and grind of that, like how it is to like persevere through, like with the highs and lows and navigating and so forth. Like how do you stay mentally strong, physically strong, and still thrive in your career and so forth?
Yeah, it's a lot. As being a business owner, or being your own brand or your business, it could be a very emotional thing. There are such awesome highs, and there are really miserable lows. And again, this is part of why having that support is so important, because it can feel really isolating, especially when you're not going somewhere to work. It's just like you in your house getting dealt this blow, the day that you get 2-3 client cancellations all at the same time for, reasons out of your control that has nothing to do with you, but you're just like, it's all crumbling. I think that's some of those recurring feelings of like, it almost never feels like safe to relax and tell yourself like, whew, okay, like we made it, we're good. You're always kind of looking over your shoulder like, what's going to come take this away? I've worked so hard to build it to this point, and it still feels like it could come crumbling down at any minute. And I think we all have those feelings, and I know in entertainment and creative arts too, it's like it's almost more pressure once you've succeeded, and once you're on a big stage, or once you're doing something professionally, is like, well, now I got all these people trying to take it away from me. Now, as hard as I was working, now there's hundreds behind me trying to take my spot. And now it's almost like you keep telling yourself like, well, once I do this, or once I get here, then I can kind of relax and chill. And you realize like, if anything, you're just like continuing to ramp up. You just kind of put more and more pressure on yourself to keep succeeding. So I think having an outlet to talk about those things is important. Like I said, I worked with a business coach who recommended this. I sometimes do kind of talk through like the worst case scenario of like, all right, well, if you're so fearful of like this business crumbling, what if it did? And just like not shying away from that possibility, like reminding myself like it's very unlikely that that's going to happen, because you would have to just like roll over and take it, and you're not going to. But also that like the skills and the qualities that you develop while you're building a business or while you're honing your craft, those become part of you. So I've always taken comfort in the fact that like, well, if this particular thing fell apart, I trust myself to figure something else out. And I credit building the business in the first place with that mentality, that I don't tell myself this is the only thing I could ever be good at, or the only thing I could ever do. If it's not this, then I'd be SOL, but more so, this is what I want to be doing, and I will try my hardest to make sure that I can. And also, if for whatever reason I couldn't, I can trust myself that I would figure it out. So I think that's comforting. And also, I'd imagine I'm not alone in not spending a lot of time celebrating my wins.
Okay.
And kind of moving the goalpost on myself. So that's something I've tried to do more of also, is instead of working really hard to accomplish some milestone or reach some level, only to then be like, well, that's not really a big deal, on to the next thing. Really trying to savor like, hey, it is a big deal. If you get signed to a team or a record label, or you get booked for this gig, like that is a big deal. You have wanted it for a long time. You have worked hard to get it. Like relish that for a minute, not forever. Don't, sit back and get complacent, but appreciate what it took to get there, and don't always be, immediately looking to the next thing. I recently published a book and had to really work with myself to slow down and appreciate that accomplishment, because it was like, by the time it actually came to fruition, I felt like I had kind of moved on to like, all right, well, what's next? And I really had to remind myself like, hey, let's appreciate this, because it's a big deal. So I think that helps. Like, we have a tendency to focus on the negative and make those big. So it's really important to be intentional about reminding yourself, like, hey, the bad exists with the good. So at least give the good,
Definitely.
the same amount of time and energy.
Now, you mentioned your book. You are artist in your own right as well in the writing industry and so forth. So talk about your book. What's the name of it? What it's about.
Thank you so much. It's called To Your Health, A Lifestyle of Health, Happiness, and Confidence. And it's basically a roadmap, or like a companion guide for a woman looking to lose weight and wanting to do it in a way that's actually going to work. It's not a diet book in the sense that it's full of exercises for your bat wings or green smoothie recipes. It's really a very comprehensive guide to everything that I know a person needs to do and be and believe in order to be successful. So yes, there's the exercise and nutrition stuff, because of course that matters, but it's a lot of kind of lifestyle and mindset work of most people know what to do at this point. The trouble is I'm just not doing it. So a lot of the book is, well, let's dive into that. Let's figure out why you're not doing it and make it easier to do so that you get the results you're looking for. And it's intended to be kind of a do as you go book. It's not one that I want people to like read cover to cover and then put back in the bookshelf and never look at it again. I really want it to be kind of this interactive, like, all right, I read this chapter, here's the thing I'm going to implement, so that by the time you're done reading it, you feel like you have the foundation to reach your goals and the confidence to know that you'll stay there once you do.
What inspired you to write this book?
That's a really good question. I kind of had this aha moment a couple of years ago where I told myself for a long time, like, it'd be cool to write a book someday. And just for forever, I was like, well, yeah, but like, you don't know how to write a book and you don't know what you would say. You don't know enough yet, but someday maybe it'd be nice. And it was like November of a couple of years ago. And I just remember kind of asking myself, like, well, when do you think you'll be ready? When do you think you'll know enough? Because you probably do now, and you could probably figure out how to write a book if you really wanted to. So like, what's actually holding you back? And then I realized it was just kind of like imposter syndrome that I felt like.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I felt like, well, there are real authors. Those are the people that are on my bookshelf right now. And then there's me, and I'm not an author. And it's just like, it was kind of this light bulb moment of like, well, yeah, of course you're not, because you haven't written a book yet. But the only thing standing between you and being an author is writing the book. And I realized that the people on my bookshelf probably didn't know either. They just decided they were committed enough to figure it out. And that was really eye-opening to me, that it kind of made me realize other areas that I was holding myself back and telling myself, oh, that's not for me, I wouldn't be good at that. It's like, well, you could be if you decided you wanted to and you were willing to learn. So then I applied, kind of the FITT framework to that. Figured out, well, if you want to write a book, you got to get words on paper. So you got to get some writing blocks on the calendar and commit to those. If you don't know anything about this, there are people who do. Find them, learn from them, surround yourself with them so that you don't feel isolated in this. Give yourself some grace, because you've never done this before and it's going to be uncomfortable. And, the first thing you write is probably going to suck, and be okay with that. But also take responsibility for the fact that, like, if this is important to you, you will do what it takes to figure it out. And then that was how I did it. So that was a really cool realization. And now it's kind of given me a new lens to be like, all right, well, what are the other things that I've like told myself I can't do that I actually could?
I believe we always going to go through some kind of level of imposter syndrome. As I have went through it early on in my career, I have had a couple of people reached out to me for speaking engagements. And in the start, I was like, why do they want me and what I'm going to talk about? So I just talked myself out of it and not doing it. And then, so even with this, podcast, like what I'm going to, talk about and bring it light, but I think going forward in this, and be encouraged in it being, I would say, the fear gonna be there, but you just doing it anyway, it will definitely help you to get out your comfort zone, and then you'll see it's not as bad as you thought it was. And then once you really start finding your stride, you definitely will be in a different spot, a different place, and level of confidence will grow and so forth from there. So what would you say to the people that are listening, how to fight imposter syndrome, or starting some type of dream that they want to do, whether it be an artist, entertainer, or whether it could be something in their career or the dreams that they have? What would you say to those people, like starting their dreams and fighting imposter syndrome in that way?
Yeah. Something that's helped me a lot is the realization that when I'm new at anything, when I'm feeling that imposter syndrome, I'm also probably doing that new thing at such a small scale that like nobody else is paying attention. Like if you think about like, what's the fear? A lot of the fear is like, I'm not going to be good at it. I'm going to embarrass myself. That's fair. But if you like, I remember very distinctly the first time I did a Facebook Live, and this is so embarrassing, but I spent like half a day like doing my hair and makeup, writing out a script, practicing it over and over again. When I finally hit play hours later, literally no one watched it. And that's been such a good reminder that whatever it is you think you're not going to be very good at, like you're probably right. The first time you do anything, you're probably not going to be very good at it. Or even if you have a decent level of just like innate talent, as your skills grow, you're still going to look back at the early times and kind of cringe and be embarrassed. And that's just part of it. That is part of growth. But I think reminding yourself that although it feels really scary and you're like, who am I to launch a podcast or want to, go speak on stage or any of this, it's like, all right, let's look at like the magnitude of this event. How many people are going to listen to my first podcast episode? Not many. How many people are going to be watching me the first time I'm on stage? A handful. How many people are going to see, if I do flop, if I put myself out there and I totally embarrass myself, how many people are really going to see? Is it really, you're not going to be in front of millions of people. You are not jumping to the highest level at whatever the thing is right off the bat. You're on a very small scale, probably around people who know you and want to see you do well and will not, actively laugh in your face and things like that. So I think that's a really good reminder is what you envision is kind of the end goal. You see yourself playing in a giant stadium or on this field, and you're blinded on the stage, you're blinded by the lights, or doing this tour and there's tens of thousands of people.
Right.
That's a great ultimate goal. But when you're first starting, of course you feel like an imposter in that scenario. But can you get up in front of, half a dozen people and just get your feet wet? Absolutely. It's almost a little bit better if you kind of do embarrass yourself right off the bat, because then you're just like, all right, well, that sucked, but I survived. So now I know that it'll sting for a little bit and then I'll be okay and I'll move on.
I don't know if you follow like Jonathan Goodman, or have you ever heard of Jonathan Goodman? Yeah. Oh, you did? Okay. Okay, cool. So he was talking about, take imperfect action and, all the time. So I think there's a lot of what goes on when we start something or want to start something. The initial fear is there, and we want something to be like perfect, or we think we got to be super experienced before we go out there and get it. And I think that holds us back a lot. On one thing, be perfect, all our ducks in a row. And when you just really go out there, and just start, stuff will start aligning as you go. And I think that speaks to that a lot. And I like that you shared this. What would you say was your creative process in writing the book? From the start of it to the end of it, like what was your creative process going through that, and what was your experience like once you got it out there and you said bestseller? So into that, and like, how did that feel?
Thank you. Yeah, awesome question. So I worked with a writing coach, and it gave me a process to follow, which was so helpful. Because instead of just trying to piecemeal something together, I had specific steps. So step one was just kind of brain dumping each individual thought onto a different note card that I then spread out on the floor and kind of lumped together like with like. A lot of them were redundant and the same thing, said differently. But that's where I got sort of the coach called it mind spaghetti, where it's just like you have like kind of this jumbled mess in your head that you're like, I have a lot to say and none of it is going to come out the way I want to. You just get it all out. Then you sort of work through the chapter kind of structure of taking people from kind of explaining the problem and then providing the solution. Then it was the best advice that I got from her was she said to write the worst first draft that you can. And it took the pressure off trying to write anything good, because that's where a lot of people get bogged down is like each sentence you're trying to write it in like the final way. So it ends up being it ends up being like this slog where you're just like, well, I got 3 sentences done today and it took me an hour and a half, and it feels really defeating. Her approach was just like, just get words out on paper and let it suck. Do not go back and try to edit it as you go. Just get it done. And that really gave me the freedom to just write kind of free form. And then before I worked with an editor to do chapter by chapter editing, but I did a second version myself where I was like, all right, well, this rough draft is like really rough, so I can't let anybody see that. So then I went back and I refined that. I got it to the point where I was like, this is the best I can do by myself. So I'm less embarrassed for somebody else to read it and knowing I've made my best effort, and I know that it's just going to get better. So I think like the final version was probably version 6 maybe. And now I read it and I'm like, man, this is good. And I look back, I saved each draft individually so I can like see the progression. And I'm like, oh, that first one was bad. So working with an editor helped a lot. I had beta readers who were like my ideal reader of the book, who were former clients and people I knew, who I asked for feedback on kind of specific things. Was this clear? What feelings do you have as you're reading the book? To make sure that, you know, what I'm trying to convey to people is coming across. And so that part actually went smoother than I was expecting, because there was always like kind of a next step. What was tough was after I handed it off to the publisher, it was almost a full year before it actually got published. And it was hard to like keep up the excitement and the enthusiasm for it, because it was just like, well, that's just like a thing I did that like it'll come out eventually. So the thing I found the most difficult, it's funny to come full circle, is the marketing and the sales of the book, because it feels like the accomplishment
I'm
is
glad you said that.
Getting it out into the world, but the actual accomplishment is getting people to read it. And there are plenty of books that just sit on Amazon unread, and you know, very, very few are selling thousands or more copies. So now it's sort of the ongoing, well, you got to keep talking about it. And going back to being, you know, a trainer first, I didn't get into this to talk about myself or talk about, to try to sell people. So a large part of me just feels like the book is just really good and people should read it. And like, why do I have to keep talking about it? You know? Right. So I'm kind of up against that like little bit of resentment. But then I kind of remind myself, just like I did almost 20 years ago, learning PT sales, is like, well, people need to know about it in order to buy it. So your job, if you want to help people and you know that this book can help people, then your job is to make sure that they're aware that it exists and how it will benefit them individually. So that's kind of the ongoing work with it.
I like that you said that once you got it out there, it's still a level of marketing. I think artists and entertainers, they good at making the product, but selling the product is a whole different story. So that goes back into the whole business aspect of it. You know, like, if nobody knows about it, nobody gonna listen to it or read it. You know, so you gotta put yourself out there. Like, so what would you say to those folks that just really just putting themselves out there? You know, maybe scared to write that song, scared to write a book. What would you say to those people who won't maybe got a book? They say we at least got one good book in us. That's what I heard. Right.
I know, that's such a cool thing. You know, I guess I would say what's scarier, doing it or not doing it? Because that's the alternative, is you have this dream, you have this thing that you want to pursue.
Right.
Wouldn't it be worse to never try? You know, think about that future. Like, how would it feel 10, 20, 30 years from now to be looking back and have not done it? Wouldn't you rather have tried, even if it doesn't pan out or you never reach kind of the level that you would like to? Wouldn't you rather have tried your best and to look back without regrets than to wonder, well, what if I had just gotten over the fear and gave it a shot?
I can relate to that as well, because I always wanted to write and make music and so forth. There was always a dream, but I come from like a very religious Christian background. Grandmama was a preacher, uncle's a preacher now, and so forth. So I was just thinking, man, if I do put something out there, because hip hop is my medium, but if I do put something out there, what would they think of something like that or whatever? So I'm scared that to do, to put something out. But over the years, when COVID happened, I just like, okay, I always wanted to do it. It never did, went away. So I said, let me go out there and start. So I have got some songs, written up, and just haven't recorded anything yet, but plan to do so. But I think just really like, looking back at it, like what you were saying, if I didn't do it, I would always be thinking, and that would be at the back of my mind, like, what if? How would this be? I think that speaks a lot to what you just said to that moment. Don't leave no regrets. If it's a dream you have, go out for it. So I love that. So like, what are you doing? Like, what's next? What is it? Another book in line, or what's currently in the pipeline for you right now?
Yeah, I do have another book I want to write, and it's funny. I am noticing kind of a similar narrative with this one, that I am continuing to kind of tell myself, yeah, but you don't know how to. I'm like, come on, you've done it now. You can't be falling back on that. You do know how. So that's one, but I am kind of bridling myself with that, because the last thing I want to do is write 2 books that I'm not marketing. So I've kind of challenged myself with like, hey, you will have my full support to write the second book once you have really committed to marketing the first one. And I think that's a good way to kind of stretch myself of it's easy to, write on my computer at home and put something out. But if I really wanted to have an impact, then I need to devote more energy right now to marketing, because then if I have a better handle on that, it's then much easier to replicate a second time. So that's one thing. So I'm also trying to kind of transition into doing more speaking and more workshops than just one-on-one coaching, which again is very out of my comfort zone. I've always considered myself introverted. I've always said I have no interest in being on a stage. And it was just kind of one of those things, you get that kind of thing in the back of your head and you're just like, maybe. So I joined a Toastmasters speaking group, and I actually just yesterday found out that I was selected to speak at a conference this summer, a wellness conference for educators here in California. And it was such I'm very excited, but I did the application months ago. It's one of those things that like you just kind of do it and forget about it. And like the accomplishment for me was just putting myself out there and completing the application and not being like, oh, I don't know, making excuses. So that was the win. I had already won because I submitted it and I just didn't think anything else of it. And then I got the email that I was approved and I was like, oh, well, now I have to do the thing. It kind of felt good to take like the baby step, but now I'm just kind of being forced into it. So, I have that. And then I have a couple of local speaking engagements lined up. So that's the big thing right now, is just kind of forging onward, even though everything in my body is saying like, come up with a reason to cancel, don't do it.
Okay.
That's where I'm headed right now.
You say you've been doing this 19 years, right? As far as your fitness career and so forth. Through all that, the book writing, elevating your business, going 2 different lanes that you helping and so forth, and going into the speaking engage, how do you keep your health and mental health, physical health and mental health at the forefront through all these engagements and so forth? And then you say you're a Navy wife, so, so no, there's a lot going on with that as well. So how do you keep fitness at the forefront with that?
Yeah, the number one thing is getting it done early. I have fortunately never fallen into the trap of let me wake up and check my email and get this one thing done and then I'll get my workout in. I just have my blinders on. I wake up within 15 minutes of waking up. We have a garage gym. I'm out there doing it. I've just really been very, very determined to keep the morning routine going, because I know very well from experience that if you tell yourself later, the day can very easily get away from you and you end up not doing it. So that's just been a really big one, that I know what an impact exercising has on my mental health, my productivity, my creativity, and that, 30, however long it is, 20, 30, 45 minutes that I'm spending working out is like absolutely not detracting from what I'm getting done in my business, allowing me to get more done in less time and have a better product at the end. So it's just it's always been a non-negotiable. And I think even if you're not in the habit and you haven't been doing it for decades, just experimenting, saying, okay, for the next month, could I 3 days a week, could I wake up 30 minutes earlier and get in some form of movement, even if it's body weight stuff or walking or whatever. And let me just see at the end of the month, do I feel like that 30 minutes, 3 days a week? So what is that, an hour and a half? So like, is that 6 hours this month that I spent exercising? Do I feel like that was a detriment to my craft or to my business? Or am I feeling the way it's benefiting me? And, at that point, you're going to be hooked and it'll be easier to keep doing.
Not just the artists and entertainers, but I believe as fitness trainers listening to this, they need to understand that a lot of folks don't realize that we take a toll on our bodies too as well. They're going through this, helping people with their goals, but we taking a toll sometime as well. So I think that speaks to that. So what would you say to somebody who's a newly trainer, got their certification? What would be your advice to them, starting out? Because like I said, I realized that when they give us a certification, they don't really tell us a lot of stuff. And so they, like I said before, they just feed us to the wolves and figuring it out ourselves. So what would you say to that newly fitness trainer out there, or coach or health coach or so forth, and starting their fitness career?
That's a great question. And I wish there were platforms like this when I was starting out, because I feel like I made every mistake in the book. The thing I would say is just focus on your next client. It's so overwhelming when you're first starting out to think about like, oh my gosh, how am I, if I'm trying to get, 20 clients to be fully booked, how am I going to get all these clients? And it just feels so overwhelming. It's like, you don't, you get them one at a time. And maybe at the beginning, that means you charge less, or you even take on some pro bono clients, or you say to like your mom or your sister or somebody like, hey, can I train you? And you start, and you get a testimonial, or you get some content for social media to say like, look at the progress this client has gotten. Just the same way you would take a client through a workout. Say you have a really sedentary, deconditioned client, and they're just feeling so overwhelmed of like, I don't know what I'm doing in the gym. I feel like I have so far to go that it just feels like it's going to take forever. You know exactly what you'd say to that client. You'd say, well, we're going to start small. I'm going to meet you where you are, and we're going to gradually challenge you a little bit more as you get ready for more. And over time, you'll be able to look back and see how far you've come, how much stronger you are, how much better your conditioning is. But on a day-to-day basis, things are not going to be drastically different. The same goes to applying your business. Is you just have to meet yourself where you are, give yourself grace for the things that you don't know, but have the mentality that you can figure those things out, and just start with one. And I know John Goodman is kind of famous for saying,
right,
do good work and make sure everybody knows about it. I mean, that is what it boils down to, is like, just even if you're working with one client, give them the very best that you have to offer, and then use that to say, all right, where am I going to find client number 2? And I'd say also be creative, think outside the box. That I know when I first started my online business, it felt like there were certain things I had to do. I had to be marketing in this way, or I had to source clients in that way. But remind yourself that part of why you became an entrepreneur and started your own business is that you wanted to make the decisions that feel right to you. So maybe you're somebody who really enjoys the creativity of social media, and you want to be writing content and testimonials and things like that. Maybe you're somebody who has always thrived striking up conversations wherever you go. So even though your business is online, maybe you're meeting people organically in your real life. You're wearing a trainer shirt to the grocery store or the playground, and you're having a conversation with people there. Like, you get to decide what feels right to me. How do I, there's no one right way to do it. And I think learning that early on really saves you a lot of hassle in trying to do it somebody else's
definitely
way.
I like that. So I'm not let you go, like I said, but what would you say be the biggest takeaway from this conversation to the artists and entertainers out there, to the fitness coach or trainer, health coach that's out there, or somebody just really want to start for their dream and just go for what they want to do in life? What would you say the biggest takeaway that they can take from this, or what would you say to them before?
The first thing that's coming to mind that's applicable to all of those people is to just start. It's so easy to listen to a podcast like this and kind of get fired up and be like, yeah, okay, that makes sense, I'm going to do it, and then to not. So really challenge yourself to take one thing that we talked about today, or one thing that will help you move forward, and just do it. Kind of, I'm a big advocate of like ripping the Band-Aid. You mentioned, how we want to like have our ducks in a row, and like let your ducks be a mess and still go for it. Like just do something, whether it's, like the application where you're just like, I don't even care if this pans out. I'm just going to do it because that's a step. Just do something, because the confidence that you start to build and the identity you start to step into is you're just like, well, I wouldn't have done that if I'm not the sort of person who, and that's how you develop into who you are. So take some action today, take that first step, and do it scared, do it with the risk of failure or embarrassment, and prove to yourself that like, hey, that's probably not going to happen.
Okay,
and
I like
does,
that.
like,
You said let your ducks be in a mess. I might have to use that. Okay, cool. So tell everybody where they can find you, and let's set your links and stuff out there. Market yourself more.
Yeah, you can buy the book To Your Health on. Thank you, I appreciate that. You can buy the book To Your Health on Amazon. It's also wherever books are sold, but Amazon's probably the easiest for you. My website is esteravant.com, and you'll find links there to my social media, coaching, etc. I'm primarily on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn these days for social media, and my handle is just Esther Avant.
Is there anything else would you like to cover before we go?
No, this was awesome. I loved our conversation. I love what you're doing, and
I appreciate it.
I appreciate all you guys listening.
Glad you can come, and definitely we would like to have you back sometime in the future. Cool. All right, so
I love that. Thank you.
I've been your host, Trea Da Fit Artist here at Sculpt N Create, and guest Esther, and we out. Thank you for tuning in to this episode. If you enjoyed it, be sure to follow us on social media and subscribe to the show wherever you listen to podcasts so you never miss an episode. If you're looking for fitness coaching to help you reach your goals, want to join our animated network for fitness guidance, collaborations, networking, and community, or are interested in being a guest on the show, check out the links in the description. Stay creative, stay fit, and we'll holler at you next time.